Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Town Council, for hosting me today. Just want to go over the new state fertilizer law and stormwater and what it means to typical homeowners. And I just spoke with the mayor and found out his thoughts on it, but just want to give you some background on why stormwater is important and why fertilizer is impacting our waterways. So quickly, I want to go into the idea of a watershed. Some people don't realize that everyone in the whole country lives in a watershed, and a watershed is just an area of land that drains to a water body. So here in West Orange, the town is actually in two watersheds depending on where you are in the town. You have the Lower Passaic River watershed, and you also have the Rowe River watershed. But basically, when it rains, all the water that is on the surface can end up down into our sewer system, down into the drain, and as it's on its way from the place that it's raining down into the drain system, it can collect pollution along the way. It can pick up solids, debris, fertilizer, all kinds of things. But there are a couple other things that can happen when it rains. Some of the rain is absorbed by plants. Water is taken up by plants for them to live. But the water can also be infiltrated down into the soil to feed the base flow of our rivers and streams. Water can also be evaporated after it rains. It can go back up into the air. And then, like I said, it can run off of hard surfaces. And so because of the pollution that's coming off of our surfaces, we actually have two different types of pollution. We have point source pollution and non-point source pollution. So point source pollution is very easy. It's a very easy concept to grasp. It's basically anything that's discharging out of a pipe. That is a point source of pollution because you know exactly where the pollution is coming from. You can figure out who is discharging it, and they can be fined. So something like factories, industry, chemical companies, those are all point sources of pollution. But non-point source pollution is what's coming from runoff, from all that water that's coming off of those hard surfaces. And there's no way to figure out who is responsible for that pollution because everyone has land, everyone has property, everyone has a driveway and a house, and so all of those hard surfaces are leading to non-point source pollution. So some non-point source pollutants that end up in that runoff are oil and grease from cars, fertilizer, animal waste, so if people don't pick up after their pets, sewage leaks, grass clippings, if you end up putting your grass down into the sewer drain, sediments, debris, household cleaning products, all of those are non-point source pollutants because we can't track down where they're coming from because they belong to society as a whole. But why is non-point source pollution so important? Well, it really impacts our water quality, which impacts drinking water, it impacts recreation activities, it impacts commercial fishing, tourism. Fish and wildlife can also be impacted by negative water quality. And so some things that people might not think of as pollutants are nitrogen and phosphorus because these are chemicals that plants need to grow. They are found in the earth. They are natural, but they are essential for plant growth. And we really need to be aware that when you are putting fertilizer down and enhancing the nutrients that are in the soil, some of that can be considered pollution if it's in excess of what the plants need. So why was the new state fertilizer law passed? Well, basically, in watersheds where there's lots of lawn, lots of turf, lots of grass cover, the watersheds were receiving runoff from all those areas that had very high concentrations of those pollutants, high concentrations of nutrients, phosphorus, nitrogen, and so they were getting polluted, all of our lakes, all of our rivers, all of our estuaries. And so the New Jersey governor decided to regulate the application of fertilizer and other lawn chemicals to help deal with the water quality that was being impacted by these pollutants. So what does the new state fertilizer do? Basically, it establishes a statewide fertilizer standard. So this will preempt anything that each town has on the books already in terms of ordinances. I heard you just say that you never passed or you did not update or pass an ordinance because you knew about this new fertilizer law. But in other towns, the statewide fertilizer law would preempt that. And so this law requires professional applicators, contractors, professional landscapers to undergo training and pass a test to become certified in order to practice. This new law also establishes a buffer for any area that's draining to a water body. So you are not allowed to use fertilizer 10 feet away from a water. So there's a 10-foot buffer area for any property that's along a stream, a lake, any water body like that. The state law also prohibits fertilizer application just before or during a heavy rainfall onto any hard surface. You can't put fertilizer on your driveway or your street. I know it makes sense, but a lot of people do it because they get lazy with how they're rolling their spreader around. But it's also prohibiting putting fertilizer down on frozen ground. Again, that makes sense, but it's a problem for some of the contractors. So what are some ways that the typical homeowner can adhere to this new law and to protect our waterways? So one thing that can be done is that you can have your lawn soil tested to see if you even need fertilizer. Some people put fertilizer down without even knowing whether their lawn is healthy or not. So if you get a soil test, then you'll know for sure if you need to add nitrogen or fertilizer or phosphorus. Another thing that you can do is to use a grass that's local to New Jersey. You want to make sure that you're using a grass that is adapted to New Jersey's climate so that it can live through very wet times and very dry times, which we've had all kinds of weather this year. But another thing that you can do is have your mower deck be at its highest setting so that your grass grows longer, it establishes deeper roots, and then that way you don't have to mow as often, and your lawn is much more adaptable to the different weather conditions. You can also leave your grass clippings on your grass to return nutrients back to the soil without having to put fertilizer down. And you can make sure that you only use fertilizer when you actually need it. Like I said, having a soil test is a great way to tell that. And make sure that you follow the directions on the fertilizer bag. Don't use the whole bag if you don't have a lawn that's big enough, or don't buy 3 bags and then put them all down when you really could have only gotten away with 1. And finally, you can also make sure that you only water your lawn when it's necessary, because that way you're not generating runoff and polluting the waterways. So what about if you have a professional lawn service? What should you talk to them about? So you want to make sure that they check the lawn for specific problems and test only when necessary, and not just blow up the whole system and start from scratch. You really want to spot treat whenever possible. So if you have an area that has a particular disease or a pest or something like that, make sure that the lawn care company only puts the solution on the particular area that's having the problem. You can also ask them to make sure to actually follow these new fertilizer application guidelines. If you have a pest issue, make sure that the lawn care company uses integrated pest management practices, which is another certification that they need to have. They can leave their mower deck high as well, and then you can also make sure that they have received certification in this new requirement in 2012. Every single professional landscaper will need to have passed this exam in order to practice. So make sure that your landscaper gets their license before you put them out for hire next year. And certainly if you guys have any questions, I am here. Like Mike said, I'm over at the Environmental Center in Roseland, and I will be helping with the water monitoring, education, and curriculum. So please let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks very much.
Does the law talk about enforcement? How is this enforced locally?
For the homeowner, there will not be enforcement right away. Originally, there was not going to be any enforcement for homeowners. It would only be on the professionals. But it turns out that once the law has been established, they are going to impose fines for homeowners when it's reported to the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. But they're still working out how exactly that's going to work. It's still a process. Things are still getting up and running.
Right, and as far as you mentioned the professionals, there might be enforcement on professionals. How would that work? Would it be like the licensing board?
It would actually be a $500 fine for the first offense and then a $1,000 fine for the second offense. And that would be based on reportings done by nosy people or
Sure.
just people like me, environmental folks that are taking a look at these new regulations. And all of those complaints would be filed with the Department of Environmental Protection.
Very good, thank you.
Amy, are there alternatives to use now for the chemically treated fertilizers? Are there alternatives available?
There are organic fertilizers out there. They are growing in popularity. Right now, they can be bought in a lot of specialty stores. I'm not sure if West Orange has a specialty hardware store. I'm not sure what the availability is here, but certainly you can lime your soil using actual lime rather than other ways to bring the pH up. There are lots of organic alternatives, but the things that I just listed are some things that can make your lawn healthy without having to use chemicals. But once the manufacturers have to adhere with the law, which is 2013, all the fertilizers that will be on the market will be in compliance with the new law.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that concludes our conference meeting. Madam Clerk, will you please start the public meeting?
This is to inform the